Friends, oh, is this chair squeaky? This chair might be squeaky. That's a squeak. Squeak. Okay, excuse me. 1 second. Okay, got a new chair. Alright, new chair. Alright. Chevre. Oh, where's my watch? Alright, 1 second. Put my watch. One second. Put on my watch. While I'm doing that, Chevre. Chevre. This could totally be another hour daf. This could totally be another hour daf. What daf we're learning? Daf Mem Vav? I don't know what they're feeding these dafs. They're humongous. Okay. Well, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Vav, Daf 46 of Masechta Sotah, friends. What do you want me to tell you? Humongous daf talking about Egla Rufa. The first Amud is not easy. It's not hard, but it's not like fast Agadata. It's not like a big page of fast Agadata. It's like a big page of Kal v'chomers and stuff you got to work through. Klal ufrat, and then it's some Agadata. But wow, dude, I mean these daf. I don't know what they're feeding these dafs. All right, we're going to start on Daf Mem Hey Beis, about 5-6 lines from the bottom at the Mishnah. Niftu Ziknei Yerushalayim v'Hochuloin. So we had said that the Sanhedrin takes part in the Egla Rufa. So we had Machlokas. Is it 3, 5, the entire Sanhedrin? So they are only needed to measure from the corpse to the nearest city. Once they've done that, they go home. So Niftu Ziknei Yerushalayim v'Hochuloin. So the Sanhedrin, they go home. Ziknei Osa Ha'ir, and now the elders of the closest city, Mevi'in Eglas Boker, they bring a calf, a 1 or less year old calf, Asher Lo Moshel Ba'ol, that never schlepped a yoke, Be'ein Hamum Posa Ba, and mums are okay. It could be all mummy and everything. That's all right. Umoridin Osa L'Nachal Eisen, and then they bring it down to a nachal, to an Asin valley. Asin Kamashma Okashim. What Asin means is that it's rough, a hard, rough valley. Afapisha Eino Asin Kasha, and even if it's not hard and rough, Beseder, as long as it's a valley, it's okay. The orphan also bekupitz me'acharel, and they kill it by a blow of a kupitz from behind it. And Rashi says that a kupitz is a kimin sakin gadol, a big knife. So I'm going to call it a machete. So they take a machete and whack it in the back of the neck, and that's all she wrote. And then you can't plant anything in where you did the Egla Rufa. Umilavod, and you can't work the ground. But what you can do is you can comb flax, you can chisel stones. And then the elders of the city, they wash their hands in water in the place where the Egla Rufa went down. And they say, Yadenu, they proclaim, they announce, Yadenu lo shavcha es adamazeh, our hands did not spill this blood, ve'enenu lo ra'u, our eyes did not see it. I don't understand. Would it enter our minds to think that the elders, that the Talmidei Chachamim, who are the elders of Bezdin, are a bunch of murderers? I mean, we can assume that they were not the murderers. So why do they have to say that we didn't do it? So Ela Shlaba Ayodenu Uftarnu V'Loreinu Ve'Nachnu. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what this means. Well, I mean, here where there's parentheses, but and the Gemara explains that it means what's in the parentheses, but that he didn't come to us and we sent him away without any food. We didn't see him and send him away without anybody to escort him. The Gemara is going to talk all about escorting people when they're leaving. We didn't know that we didn't notice this person, right? We didn't see him and then send him off without properly taking care of him. We weren't aware that he was in town. And then the priests say, Kaper l'amcha Yisrael asher pedisu Hashem, atone for your nation Israel that you have redeemed. V'altitein damnaki b'kerev amcha, I think, amcha Yisrael, and do not have innocent blood be spilled within your nation Israel. And then the final bit of that pasuk, they didn't have to actually say, which is, and that the blood will be atoned for. Ela Ruach HaKodesh Mevasarten, the divine spirit informs them that that as long as you've done the Egla Arufa, rest assured that you will be atoned. Okay, fine. So that's basically the Torah is saying, as long as you do the Egla Arufa, you will receive atonement. Okay. Now things kind of slow down a bit for basically almost this entire Amud. You got to just work through it. Kal v'chomer is that kind of stuff, It's got to, hold a few things in your brain. V'hei mum posel be'egla mikal v'chomer. So, the Mishnah had said that, what did the Mishnah say? Ve'ena mum posel ba. That you can have a mum by an egla arufa. The animal could have a mum. That's okay. But Fekti Gemara, how come it's okay? V'hei mum posel be'egla. I should argue that by an egla arufa, this calf should have to be unblemished. It cannot have a mum. Mikal v'chomer. From the following logical argument. Umapare she'ena shonim poslis ba. When it comes to para aduma, I'm going to assume that everybody knows what a para aduma is. When it comes to para aduma, the years, it could be however old you want. Para aduma, there's no, if it's 2 years old, 3 years old, 4, whatever it is, there's no, age doesn't matter, is not a factor when it comes to para aduma. And yet, mum posaba. So even though para aduma is more lenient to the extent that age is not a factor, but if it has a mum, that's a problem. Egla. So therefore I'll argue that when it comes to egla arufa, sheshanim postos ba, that egla arufa is a more stringent zach, it's a more stringent thing, because it has to be, it's stringent, it can only be a year. After a year, you can no longer use it. Enodin sheimum posel ba. So if it's such a strict thing that there's a time, the age is a factor, so certainly a mum should also be a factor. So that's the Gemara's kasha. How come the Mishnah says that a mum is not a factor when it comes to egla arufa? I would think that since egla arufa is more stringent in that age matters, I would think that mum should also matter. And for the Gemara nisht, shiny awesome, it's different when it comes to para adume, the Amar Kra, because the pasuk specifically says by para adume, asher ein ba mum. That the para aduma ba, it does not have a mum, ba mum posel. That mum is limited, mum being a problem is limited to para aduma. Ve'ein mum posel be'egla. Mum is not an issue by egla rufa, it is limited to para aduma. By para aduma, mum is a problem, by egla rufa, it is not. Elameato, fekti gimoche, lo yehu shar avodis poslis ba pam 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 param. No, by egla arufa, it says asher lo ubad ba, it says by egla arufa that it cannot have had any kind of work, as opposed to by the para aduma where it says asher lo ala alea ol. It says by para aduma that it simply cannot have a yoke on it. But that's it. It doesn't say anything about other kinds of work. However, so I might think that by egla arufa it says asher lo ubad ba. You have to take a calf that has not done any kinds of work, but it says ba. I would think that any kinds of work should be limited to egla arufa and should not be applicable to para aduma, which only mentions a yoke. So Alama Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, but why does Rav Yehuda say the name Rav? Hiniach alea uda shel sakin, that even if he simply put a bundle of sacks on the para aduma, psula. Forget about a yoke. Even if you just put a bunch of bundles of sacks on the para aduma, it's psula. When it comes to egla arufa, because it says asher, what does it say? By egla arufa, asher lo mashcha ba'ol, so it would have to schlep it. But we see that para aduma is not limited to a yoke. It also includes other kinds of work. But where? It doesn't say anything other than a yoke by para aduma. It seems that we're learning it out from egla arufa. But by egla arufa it says asher lo ubad ba. It says ba, and apparently ba seems to be a limitation, right? We had said that it says asher ein ba mum by para aduma, and therefore it limits mum to para aduma, and it cannot be extended to egla arufa. So therefore, I should make the same argument that when it says asher lo ubad ba by egla arufa, only all sorts of malacha is a problem by egla arufa, but it should not be a problem by para aduma. And yet, we seem to be saying that by para aduma, all sorts of work is a problem. And for the Gemara, shiny para adume, no, shiny para, the alfinot all me eglo. Ha ha. But we have a gzeir shava. Ha ha. So the reason why by para aduma all sorts of work is going to be disqualifying is because we have a gzeir shava. It says all by para aduma, and it says all by egla arufa. So just like by egla arufa, all sorts of milacha is a problem, so also by para aduma all sorts of work is a problem. By egla nami say all mi para, ha 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 ha. But why don't we then flip it back the other way around and say, okay, so now just like a mum is disqualifying by para aduma, by way of the gzeir shava, let's say that a mum is also disqualifying by egla arufa. So hamiyet rachmana ba, but we say yes, but as we pointed out earlier, it says ba by para aduma, and therefore a mum is only a problem by para aduma. It is not a problem by egla arufa. But by egla nami ksiv ba, but still you can't just use that argument selectively. Going back to our question, by egla arufa it also says ba, and therefore I should limit the milacha to egla arufa, and milacha should, if it has done milacha, it should be okay by para aduma. So the answer to Gemara, good question. Hahumi baile, but that ba is not needed to say, to exclude work from para aduma. No, by para aduma, all sorts of work is going to be a problem. What ba is coming to exclude is hahumi baile lemute kodshim to lo pasla buhu avoda. It's to say that by korbanis, if you're offering a korban, but the korban has done work before, that's okay, because only by egla arufa is work a problem, but not by other korbanis, not by korbanis. Because I may have thought to make the following argument: Lacey b'kal v'chomer me egla. I should bring the following kal v'chomer from egla arufa. Ma egla she'ein mum posel ba. If by egla arufa, where it's more lenient in that mums are not a thing by egla arufa, and yet avoda poseles ba, and yet it's a problem if this calf has worked before. So kodshim shemum poseles ba, and kodshim korbanos, which are already more stringent in that they definitely cannot have a mum, enodin shavoda poseles ba, then certainly there, if they've done work, that should be a problem. After all, if by egla arufa, where mum is not a problem, work is a problem, by korbanos, where mums are a problem, certainly then work should be a problem too. So the Gemara says, one second, maybe that's not such a great kal v'chomer, because ikal mifrach mal egla shekein shanim poslis ba. But egla arufa is actually stringent to the extent that there's an age limitation. It has to be within the first year. It can't be more than that. But atukachim mileka de pasli bushanim. But what by korbanos also there are korbanos like korban pesach, korban chatas. These are korbanos that have an age limitation. So ki itzrich kol lahanach kachim de pasli bushanim, and therefore, so therefore, egla arufa, yes, age is a limitation, right? It has to be within the first year. There are also korbanos like chatas, like korban pesach, that age is a limitation as well. And I would then say, right, so those are basically the same in that regard, and then I would then make the kal v'chomer that, and now if by egla arufa, where a mum is acceptable, and yet it can't work, so I might think that by these korbanis, where a mum is not acceptable, certainly work should be a problem. Therefore, we have ba by egla arufa to say that no, work is a problem by egla arufa. It is not a problem by kodshim. V'kodshim de lo paslebu avoda mehocha nafka. But now frek the Gemara. This is where we learn out that work is okay by korbanis. This is where we learn out that work is okay by korbanis. From egla arufa. Mehosim nafka. It's learned out from the following pasuk: Averis ushavur acharutzu yabelas ugarvo yalefes lusakrivu eile la Hashem. I think it was just in last week's parsha, Parshas Emor, or whenever you're listening to this, 2 weeks ago. So it lists a whole bunch of things that are unacceptable when it comes to a korban, like blindness or broken limbs, things like that. And it says, Lo sakrivu eile la Hashem. These things are problems. Eile yato makriv. These animals you can't offer. Aval ato makriv. Kodshim shenevda boin avoda. But you can offer animals that have done work. So I already know from that pasuk that work is okay when it comes to korbanis. Itzrich, no, still, I still need ba in the context of egla arufa, because Sakadati Chamira, I may have thought to say, Hanimile heicha de ovad boen avoda seter. If I would only have one source, then I might think that, yeah, the work that is okay for an animal that's going to be a korban is permissible types of work. Aval avodas iser, but forbidden types of work. And Rashi points out, for example, if you have an ox and a donkey plowing together, which is not allowed, or for example, if work was done from the animal on Shabbos, right? Different types of things that are not allowed. Ema litzur, I might think that these animals should be disqualified as a korban. So tzricha, we say no, any kinds of work that was done with this animal is acceptable and you can offer it as a korban nonetheless. But still, we learn it out from the following pasuk, that even from a Gentile who wants to offer a korban, the korban cannot have these types of blemishes. So mikol eile. But you can offer an animal that has worked before. So we already have two other psukim to teach that an animal that has done work is acceptable. Why do I need ba by egla arufa? So it's I still need that because I need three sources, because I may have thought to say I may have thought that work is acceptable if the work was done before it was made kachim, before it was declared to be a korban. I might think that if it did work after already it was declared to be an animal, I might think a korban, I might think that it is a problem. Tzricha, we have therefore three sources to teach that whether it's permissible work, whether it's forbidden work, whether the work was done before it was designated as a korban, whether the work was done after it was designated as a korban, in all cases, any work that the animal has done is okay. It will not disqualify it from being able to be offered as a korban. Okay, fine, very, very good. Gufit, we had said earlier. Rav Yehuda says the name of Rab. Hiniach alea udashel sakin. If you put a bundle of sacks on the paradume, psula, it is a problem. Uve egla ad shetimshoch. And when it comes to an egla, you would have to schlep it. By an egla, you'd have to schlep it. But by a by an egla, I would need to kind of do a mashicha. I would have to pull the work, but only by an egla roof and not by paraduma. So now meisve, we have a kasha. Apparently, by paraduma also, it would have to pull. It would have to pull the work. Ol ainli ella ol. Okay. When it comes to paraduma, all it says is a yoke. In the all I know is that a yoke is a problem. Sha'ar avodos minayin. How do I know that any other kinds of avoda would also be a problem? So Amar Kavachomer. Well, we have a logical argument. Uma egla she'ein mum posel ba shar avodos poslos ba. Well, if you have an egla arufa, which is more lenient in that it can have a mum, and yet it can't do other kinds of work. Para, by para aduma, shemum posel ba, that it is a problem, it's more stringent, that it's not allowed to have a mum. Inudin sheshar avodos poslos ba. So then certainly by para aduma, it's logical to say that all sorts of work, not just having a yoke, but all sorts of work would be a problem. And maybe I'll give you other options. Nemar kan all, v'nemar lahalan all. It says all by para aduma, it says all by egla arufa, malahalan shar avodos poslos ba. Just like by egla arufa, all sorts of melachos are a problem. Afkan shar avodos poslos. Also by para aduma, all sorts of work are a problem. How come the Gemara had to suggest if you don't like our kavachomer, learn it out from the Gezeira Shava? And if you're going to say, well, I can ask the kasha on the kavachomer, that actually egla arufa is more stringent than para aduma to the extent that there's an age limitation. There's no age limitation by para aduma. Inami, alternatively, kodshim yochichu, or I could bring you a proof from kodshim where shemum posel bohen, that just like para aduma, by kodshim mum is a problem. Ve'ein avoda poseles bohen, and yet it's allowed to do work. Right, a korban we just said, even though a mum is a problem, it can do work. So what's the problem with saying that a para aduma can also do work? I lost my place. No, where am I? Post. Wait, okay. Oh my gosh, lost my space. Nemarkan all, v'nemarlalan all, and therefore, because of these questions that we can ask on the Kal Vachomer, so therefore we say, look, at the end of the day, we have a Gezeira Shava. It says all by Paraduma. It says all by Egla Arufa, Malahalan Shar Avodos. Just like by Egla Arufa, it's all sorts of avodas. Avkan Shar Avodos. So also by Paraduma, it's all sorts of avodas, not just a yoke. Umimakum Shebasa, and here's the kicker. And now, not just to learn from, not just to learn all sorts of avoda, but also malahalan timshoch, avkan timshoch, and just like by egla arufa, it says asher lo moshcha beol, that it would have to schlep the work. So also by paradum it has to schlep. So that's a kashan of Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda said that only an egla would have to schlep, but a paraduma would not have to schlep. But here we have a brisa that's saying that because of the Gezeira Shava, we learn not only that by paraduma does it include all sorts of work that cannot be done, but also it has to schlep because it's learning out everything from egla. So Tanoi, so the Gemara answers, well, it's a machlokes Tanoi. De'ika demaisi lo me egla, because there is a brisa that we just saw that learns out, that learns out from a Gezeira Shava from egla arufa. That's how they learn out by para aduma, that all sorts of work are a problem, and then that Meshicha, and it requires Meshicha also, because they learn out para aduma from egla arufa. But v'ika demaisila migufa de para, there's also a Tanaitic opinion that says, I don't need to learn it out from egla arufa, I can learn out everything I need to know from para aduma itself. The Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, that it says by para aduma a yoke, that it can't have a yoke. In the Ela all I know is that a paraduma can't have a yoke. Sha'avodos minayin. How do I know that it also includes other types of work? Talmud Omer, asher lo Allah aleha. The way I understand it is technically you don't need the next word all, meaning asher lo Allah aleha. The point is that nothing came upon it. Mikol makom, any kind of work. Im came atam lomer all. But if we're learning out from asher lo Allah aleha, that it hasn't done any kinds of work, well then why does it specify all? Why does it specify a yoke? Because all posel bein b'shas avoda, that a yoke, whether it's doing work, whether it's not doing work, if it has a yoke, it's going to be a problem. Whereas Right, so bein b'shas avoda, bein shlo b'shas avoda, shar avodos, but other kinds of work, ein poslos ela b'shas avoda, are only going to be a problem if it's actually doing that work. Okay, ve'ema asher lo ola olea klal. So I assume that means just like kind of like, for example, like putting like sacks and stuff on the back, right? Meaning, I guess it would have to be in the context of work, I guess. I don't know, I guess that's how I understand it. Right? That meaning if you put something on the back of the para aduma and, it's not a yoke, it's some other thing, it would have to be in the context of work. That's how I understand it. Hopefully that's right. Okay, fine. So, okay, so that's how we learn out all sorts of other avodas from Asher Lo Allah. Fine, Seder. Ve'ema Asher Lo Allah alea klal. But maybe I'll say that when it says Asher Lo Allah alea, right, that we say that it can't do any kind of work. So that's a klal. But then when it says ol, a yoke, prat, that's a prat. And the halacha is that klal ufrat, that when you have a general rule followed by a specific rule, ein bichlal ella masha befrat. That the only thing, right, the prat entirely limits the klal to only the prat. And therefore, if it's saying asher lo ala aleh, which means all sorts of work, but then it says ol, which is a yoke, so it means it's the only thing that's a problem is if it has a yoke, and that's it. Ol in midi achrina lo. It's only a problem if it has a yoke, not any other kinds of work. So the Gemara says, no, don't say that asher ribuya hu. No, when it says asher lo ala aleh ol, so asher is inclusive, it's a ribui, and it's saying, no, it's not just a yoke, it's any kinds of work. So we see that according to this view, we learn out all sorts of work by paraduma from asher lo ala aleh. It didn't need to learn anything at all from egla arufa, and therefore, according to this opinion, according to this opinion, it has nothing to do with Mashicha, because Mashicha is an Egla Arufa Indian, and according to this opinion, we learned out everything we need to know from Paraduma. We didn't have to learn out anything from Egla Arufa, and therefore it doesn't have to do Mashicha or anything like that by Paraduma. V'tanya nami gabe Egla, and we also have a similar brisa by Egla Arufa, which is Ki Agavna in a similar vein. Ol ein ela ol, when it says by Egla Arufa ol, so I would think that it's limited to wearing a yoke. Sha'avodos minayin, how do I know that also an egla arufa can't do any other kinds of work? Tamaloma shelo ubad ba. It says that it can't do any kind of work. Mikol makom, any kinds of work. Imkema tamaloma ol, then why does it say a yoke if it can't do any kinds of work? Ol posel bein b'shas avoda, bein shelo b'shas avoda. Well, a yoke is going to be posel whether it's wearing it in the context of work or not. Shar avodos, whereas when it comes to other kinds of work, ein postos ela b'shas avoda would only disqualify in the context of doing work. V'ema asher lo ubad ba klal ol prat. But maybe I'll say that when it says asher lo ubad ba, that no work was done, that's a klal. But then when it says ol, a yoke, that's a prat. And klal ufrat, ein b'chlal ela masha b'frat. That when you have a general rule followed by a specific rule, the specific rule limits the general rule entirely just to that specific thing, and therefore all in midi achrina lo. I'll say that by a egla arufa, the only issue is the yoke. Asher ribuyahu. So again, we say that asher lo ubad. So the asher is inclusive to say it's not just the yoke, but it's all kinds of work. Amar Babo says, Babo, Bai minei Rabbi Yochanan. I asked Rabbi Yochanan, Mishichas ol b'chama. How much do you have to? Does the animal have to schlep with a yoke? Amar lei kimlo ol, like the size of a yoke. Midi ibaylu. They asked leorko or l'rachbo, like the length of the yoke or the width of the yoke. Amarlu omirabanon. So a certain rabbi said, Rabbi Yaakov Shmei, his name is Rabbi Yaakov Adidim Farsh Lemini Rabbi Yochanan. It was explained to me, Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, Mishichas ol l'rochbo tefach, the width of the yoke, and that's a tefach. V'lema tefach. So why not you say a tefach? How come Ashmalan shiur de ol tefach have? Well, it's teaching us that the size of a yoke is a tefach. L'manaf kamina. Who cares? What's the difference? L'mekach umimkar, for business, right? If you're buying a yoke, so the definition of a yoke is that it's a tefach, right? And if you're not getting a tefach, then you're getting ripped off. Fine. Okay, I think at this point we basically start getting into Agadita for the rest of the daf. Okay, maybe that means we can pick up the Pesach shtickle, but okay, fine. Amr Yochanan ben Shaul says, Yochanan ben Shaul pnei ma Amra Torah hevi egla banachal. How come the Torah says bring this calf to a barren, hard valley? Amr Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter says, Yavo davar shlo asa peris, let something that has not made any fruits, this young calf, v'yarif b'makom she'eno asa peris, and let its head be decapitated with a machete in a place that makes no fruits. V'yechaper al mishlo enichuhu lasos peris, and atone for this fellow, this victim, who was not allowed to live and make fruits. My Paris, what kind of fruits are we talking about? If we're talking about having children, so does that mean that if it's a fellow who's of an age that he can no longer sire children, or a saris, right, a castrato, so would we not do egla arufa because they can't have children? Ella mitzvahs. No, it means that they can no longer do mitzvahs, and therefore we take this calf that can't have any children, and in a place that doesn't have any fruits, and we to atone for this fellow who can no longer do mitzvahs because he's dead. So we bring the calf to a nachal eisen, this hard, right? He says eisen means hard, this hard valley, hardened valley. Tanu Rabbanan the Rabbi Minayin le'eisen shu kashe. How do you know that eisen means hard? Shneimar, as the pasuk says, eisen moshavecha, that your dwelling is eisen v'sim basela kinecha, and placed in the stone, in the rock, your nest. So therefore we see that eisen is compared to a rock, which is hard. V'omer shimu harim esviv Hashem ve'isanim mos de'aretz. So we're comparing esanim to harim, which are also rocky mountains. Others say, Minayin le'eisen shu yashan. How do we know that eisen means old? Shnemar goy eisen hu goy me'olamu. That it's an eisen goy, and it's a from a long time, from time immemorial. The orphan also bekupitz me'acharel, and they take a machete and they hack off its head from the back. My time outcome kamar arif mechatas off. Well, it says by chatas off mimul orpo, right, from the back of the neck. By chatas off. So here also you decapitate the head of the animal with the machete to the back of the neck. And its place cannot be seated or worked. Okay, these next few lines are extremely technical. That cannot be worked or seated. Lisha'over to Rabbi Yoshia. So Rabbi Yoshia says that means past tense, that it could never have been worked or seated. Rabbi Yonasan Omer Lahaba. Rabbi Yonasan says, talking about in the future, it can no longer be seated or worked. Amar Rava says, Rava, Lahaba Duchuliyama Lo Plige Dichsev Lo Izarea. So everyone agrees, both Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yonasan agree that it can no longer in the future be seated or worked. That's for sure. The question is, does it also include in the past having been seated or worked? Rabbi Yoshia says it doesn't say lo ye'ubad, which I guess would mean future, and therefore it means past. Rabbi Yonasan miksiv asher lo nevad, but it doesn't say. Rabbi Yonasan counters, but he says it doesn't say asher lo nevad, and therefore it means only future, not past. Rabbi Yoshia asher l'sha'avar mashma. Rabbi Yoshi says that when it says asher, it means implies past tense. Rabbi Yonasan asher ribuyahu. Whereas Rabbi Yonasan says that asher is simply a inclusive word, but not to teach past tense. Okay, there's a question, I guess, if it also has to have never had been worked ever. Okay. And you can comb over there flax, and you can chisel away at stones. That it cannot be worked, it cannot be seeded. All I know is that you can't seed things there. How do I know that you also can't do other kinds of work there? Well, it says asher lo ye'ovid bo, no kinds of work can be done in this place where the calf is decapitated with the machete to the back of the neck. Omar Imkain, if that's the case, Matam Lomer V'lo Yizareh. So why does it say that it can't be seated if we're saying that it's any kind of work? Lo Melacha Mazrim Yuchedesh Begufa Shel Karka. Well, just right. Seating is specific, unique in that it has to do with the ground itself. Avkol Shehi Begufa Shel Karka. So also, the prohibited activities are things that have to do with the ground itself. Yotza Srikas Pishtin, to the exclusion of combing flax, Vinikar Avonim, or chiseling stones, Sheinan Begufa Shel Karka, that you're not doing them in the ground. You might be sitting there doing it, but you're not, seeding things or working the land. Ve'ema asher lo yovid bo klal v'lo yizareh prat. But maybe I'll say that when it says asher lo yovid bo, that is a general rule. V'lo yizareh is a specific rule, right? Seeding klal ufrat im b'chlal el mashe befrat. So when you have a general rule followed by a specific rule, the specific rule entirely limits it to just that specific rule. Zriya in midei achvina lo. So let's say only seeding is a problem, but other kinds of work would be okay. Asher ibuyahu. Again, we say asher is inclusive to say that no, it's not just seeding, but it's any kind of work in the ground itself. The elders of the city then wash their hands on that site. And all the elders of that city that are close to the corpse, they will wash their hands on the calf that has been decapitated with the machete to the back of the neck in the valley. That it doesn't need to say ha'arufa. So why does it have this word ha'arufa that has been decapitated? That it needs to, that you have to wash your hands at the site where the calf was decapitated by a machete to the back of the neck. And they said, we didn't spill the blood of this corpse. We didn't see it. Also, right? Did it actually enter your mind to say that Bezdin murdered this fellow? No, what they're saying is that we were unaware, right? He didn't come to us and we sent him off with no food. And we didn't let him go without somebody to escort him. We were unaware of his presence. Tanya, Reb Meir would say, Kofin la Levia. It says Reb Meir that we force people to escort people on a journey. Because the reward for escorting somebody on a journey has no limit. The reward has no limit. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Vayiru ashomrim ish Yotzei min ha'ir, that when the Yidden were taking the city of Beit El, so they saw a fellow leave the city. Vayomru lo, and they said to him, Har'enu na es mevo ha'ir, show us where the entrance to the city is, so that we can capture it. And if you do this, we'll do kindness to you. And the Apostle says, that he showed them how to get into the city. What kindness did they do with him? That entire city they killed. But they spared this fellow and his family. And then this fellow went to the Hittite lands and he built a city and he called it Luz. Hishmara Yomazeh, and that is the name of the city till this very day. Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, Luz. No, he Luz Shetzovim Batchelis. That is the place called Luz that they died. Tchelis. He Luz Shebasan Cherev Velo Bilbala. That this place of Luz, Sancheiriv came, right? Sancheiriv was known for he would capture places and then he would move the populations to other places so that nobody would feel comfortable and be able to rebel because they're always out of sorts. But Nebuchadnezzar did not destroy this place called Luz. Even the angel of death is not allowed to go into this city called Luz. The old people in this place called Luz, when they had enough of living, they would leave the walls of the city called Luz and then they would die, but they could not die in the city. A number of years ago, a friend of mine, Reb Johnny Miller, was very, very excited about this sugya of the city of Luz. He tied it into all sorts of interesting inyonim. And now I'll make a kavachomer. That this Canaanite that he didn't even say epis. He didn't walk anywhere. Gorim Atzola Lo Lazara Atzov Kol Adoris, and he caused this salvation, this saving for himself and his offspring for all generations. Misha Osi Livoya Beraglov, somebody who actually escorts somebody. Halachas Kama v'Chama, certainly it's going to bring salvation to him and all of his offspring. Bameh Hera Loem. So, meaning, the point is that this guy who was spared for showing them, the Yidden, how to get into the city, and this whole Luz crazy story, he didn't even say epis. He didn't even walk anybody anywhere. He literally just showed them, right? So he says, Chizkiya Omer Befiv Okam Loim. He just moved his mouth in a certain direction. That's all he did. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Be'etzbo Herolem. He pointed with his finger. That was it. That's all he did. Didn't say anything, didn't walk nowhere, just pointed. And he got all that reward. Tane Kavasi Rabbi Yochanan, we have a brayso supporting Rabbi Yochanan b'shvil sheknaini zeh here be'etzbo garam asal lo zara atzov kol adoris. That because this Canaanite fellow simply pointed with his finger, and that was enough for him to get all of the salvation for all of the generations. Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, mahalech ba'derech, if a fellow is traveling, ve'ein lo levia, and he doesn't have anybody to escort him, he's by himself traveling, yasek b'teireh, he should study the Holy Torah. Shneimar, as the Pasuk says, Ki livyas chen heim l'roshecha v'anokim l'gag rosecha, because the Torah is like an escort of favor for your head, and I think it means like a necklace for your throat. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Arba psios shalava par l'Avram, that for a reward of the 4 steps that Pharaoh escorted Abraham, Shneimar, as the Apostle says, "Ve'itzav olav para anoshim v'gomer," that Pharaoh sent people to escort him. Nishtai b'vonav arba meis shana. Pharaoh merited to get 400 years of free slave labor from the Jews. Shneimar, as the Apostle says, "V'avadim v'inu osam arba meis shana," that Pharaoh and the Egyptians enslaved the Yidden for 400 years. Amr B'Yehuda, Amr B'Yehuda, Marav, Kole Milave es Chaveru Arba Amis Ba'ir. Anybody who just simply escorts his fellow 4 Amis in the city when he's leaving, Eino Nizok, that fellow will not be hurt, harmed on his journey. Ravina alvaye l'Rava bar Yitzchak dalet amos ba'ir. Ravina escorted Rav bar Yitzchak simply 4 amos in the city. Matli de azeka v'itzil, and Rav bar Yitzchak, there was a dangerous situation on the way, and he was saved. Tana Rabbanan Rabbi Sotah Rav the Talmud ad ibur shel ir. A teacher should escort his students just until the ibura shel ir, which is, as we learned about Masechta Eruvin, shtikol Masechta Sukkos, Sukkah, 70 and 2/3 amos, I think, outside of the city. Chaver l'chaver, one fellow to another fellow, like a Talmud Chacham to another Talmud Chacham, ad tchum Shabbos, 2,000 amos. Talmud l'Rav, a student should escort his teacher, ein lo shir, there's no amount. V'chama, and how much is this no amount? Omer Rav Sheshes ad parsa, until a parsa. V'lo amarin ela rabo she'enu mufak, and that if it's not his, Rebbe mufak, his main Rebbe, avo rabo mufak shlosha parsos. But if it's his main Rebbe, so then he should escort him up to 3 parsas. Apparently, even though we just said that there's no amount, and then immediately we go and explain an amount, it's because apparently, of course, there is some amount. It's not that he has to be with him forever. Rav Kahana avay Rav Shimi bar Ashi mi Pumnara ad Beit Siniso de Bavel. Rav Kahana escorted Rav Shimi bar Ashi from Pumnara until Beit Siniso, which is like palm tree place in Bavel. Kimoto Asim, when they got to this palm tree area, Amrle. So Rav Kahana says to Rav Shimi bar Ashi, Vadid Amisu. Is it true what they say, Hanitzinisa, Debavel, Mishneh Adam Arishin, Isnu, that these palm trees of Babylonia are from the days of Adam? Omerle, so Rav Shimon bar Ashi says, Ad Karten Milsadam Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, you reminded me of the teaching of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, my dichsiv. What does the pasuk mean? Be'eretz ashalo avar ba'ish, in the land that no fellow has, right, where no man has gone before. V'lo yoshav Adam Sham, and no fellow dwelled there. Obviously, if nobody ever If no man has gone there before, how could anybody have ever settled there? Elo eretz shegazer aleh adam rishon liyishuv nisyashva. That any land that Adam declared that this was going to be situated, so it was situated. Eretz shelo gazer aleh adam rishon lo nisyashva. Any land that Adam did not declare that it was going to be situated, well then, situated, I don't know if that's a word, settled, so then it was not settled. And therefore, the fact that there are these palm trees here means that Adam said this is going to be a place of palm trees. Rav Mordechai alvia Rav Ashi me'agronia vad bekife v'amrila ad beidoros. So Rav Mordechai escorted Rav Ashi from Agronia till Bekife. Some takas say it was till Beidora. Amar Reb Yochanan mishum Reb Meir. Anybody who doesn't escort people or it doesn't get escorted, it's as though he's spilling blood. Because if the people of Jericho would have escorted Elisha, he would not have sent the bears against these young fellows to kill them. Shneimar, as the apostle says, "V'yal misham beisel." Vehu ola baderech, that Elisha had left Jericho to go to Beisel, and he was traveling. When these young small people, they left Jericho, and they were degrading him. And they said to Elisha, Ale kerech, go away, bald one. Go away, bald one. Because what happened was in Jericho there was an issue with the water, and Elisha went and he fixed the issue with the water. But the problem is that these young whippersnappers were making a killing off of selling pure water. Now, if all the water was pure, they lost their great geschäft. So Amrulo, they said to Elisha, Ale, get out of here, because you basically dried up our parnose. What does it mean that they were Na'arim and Kitanim, right? A Kohen is like a minor, and a Nair is a young fellow, older than a minor. So were they minors or were they young fellows? Amr Balaza Sheminu Arim Mina Mitzvah. Says Balaza that they were empty from mitzvahs. Kitanim Shoymikatne Amona, and they were Kitanim that they were small in belief. Rashi says something super interesting. That they were nervous that they thought that they had no longer had parnasa anymore, because now the waters were pure. They no longer had an ability to make parnasa. It's very interesting. Lemaise, yesterday I had a great opportunity. I went to Lauren's house for lunch yesterday. It was amazing, and I'm very have a lot of akaras tov to Lauren for having me. I really appreciate that. And then I think probably at most Shabbos tables these days, everybody talks about AI and ChatGPT. Of course, we know on Babylon Talmud, ChatGPT is an Amoritz, but that's a big Shabbos table topic, is AI, and is it going to steal our jobs? But I don't know. Rashi says Ketana Mamish. What do we say? What do you guys think? Tana Na'arim Hayu, that they were Na'arim and Uvizbizu Asman Kikatan, that they were young fellows, but they acted like little babies. Maskeflo of Yosef Asakasha Viduma Al Shem Mikomon. Rav Yosef asks, maybe Ne'arim just means that they were from a place called Ne'arim. Miloksiv, after all, isn't there a pasuk Va'arim Yatsu Gidudim Va'yishbu Me'eretz Yisrael Naira Ketana, that Aram went out and they took captive from the Yidden a Naira Ketana, V'kashla Naira Ketana, and we say, was it a Naira or was it a Ketana? From Rav Pedas Ketana D'min Ne'arim. That Rav Pedas says, well, she was a Ketana, but she was from a place called Ne'orin. So can't we say it's the same thing here? Hasam lo mefarish mikoma, hacham mefarish mikoma. The difference is over there, it didn't say where she was from. So it could be that she was from Ne'orin. It could be that she was from Ne'orin. Over here, we know that they're from Jericho. Vayifen acharav vayarem vaykalim b'shem Hashem. So Elisha looked behind him and he saw them and he cursed them in the name of God. Mara, what did he see? Rav Ra Mamish. Rav said he looked at them. Ketatan is learned by Shimon ben Gamliel. Omer says Shimon ben Gamliel, Kamakom shnasu chacham name o misa o oni. That wherever, if the chachamim, give a stare, like a death stare at a fellow, Well, they're going to die or they're going to become poor. Shmuel Amar, and says Shmuel, Rosh Kulin is Abra, Boy and Iman B'Yom Kippurim. He saw that all of these fellows, their mothers conceived them on Yom Kippur when Bia is not allowed. He saw that they had like long hair, like the Amorites would do a for Avodah Zarah, so they shouldn't have been doing that. Rabbi Yochanan saw that they had zero mitzvahs in them. But maybe their offspring would have had mitzvahs. No, he saw that they had no iota, not even one iota of mitzvahs, nor did their children for all generations. Friends, that was Daf Mem Vav, Daf 46 of Masechta Sotah. That was a humongous daf. Peace out.